Well, Paul, it's nice of you to take time out from your busy schedule to come here for this, making this cassette that will go into the archives of the high school, so to record the feats of the various and experiences of the various coaches over the years. It's a little project of Dr. Robert Immel, and who you well know. And I think he's one of your student managers at one time at Washington High, was he not?
He was, and a good one.
Well, I would believe that. So we'll proceed. You know, many people, Paul, consider you the greatest coach in the history of football, and I don't want you to get embarrassed by that statement, but that is true. And we know that you've coached at all levels of high school, college, professional, 2 professional teams, and even in the military at Great Lakes Naval Training Station. Furthermore, you've turned out championship teams at all these levels. I have little figures that your teams have won 351 games, tied 16, and lost only 133 for a remarkable 725 percentage. I don't know of any comparable record. Let's start at the beginning. You were born in Norwalk, Ohio, weren't you?
Right, Norwalk, Ohio, 1908, September.
1908, yeah. And you came to Massillon when?
When I was in the 5th grade.
Oh, the 5th grade.
I think it could have been the 4th grade. It was either the 4th or the 5th grade, and as you know, we took up residence on Green Street, very near your home, where we were little boys together.
That's right. First time I met you was in we were playing kind of touch football, I guess we called it in those days, or
That's
forward pass, I guess we called it, back in Lauren Andrews, and you came over and was standing on the sidelines, and some kid got called to supper, so you joined, and we thought you were too small, but we found out you weren't. And that was my meeting with you. You see, you came to Massillon because your father was a dispatcher on the Wheeling and Lake area, is that it?
That's right, and he was transferred to Brewster, Ohio, and he felt that we should live in Massillon, and since that was only 6 miles away, he went back and forth on a hoodlebug, which is the name of the train that took people over and back to Brewster.
His name was Lester Brown. I remember seeing him many times come walking down by our house on Tremont Street, going down to catch the hoodlebug, as they called that train that ran to Brewster, took the people down. And you had a sister. That was the only other member of the family, wasn't it?
The only other child was my sister Marion, and she is married and has been for many years to Sherlock Evans here in town.
When did you first get a football in your hands?
When I was in Norwalk, I had a little football. I have pictures of it. And then the bladder went the way of all bladders, and I stuffed it with leaves and rags, I can remember. We played with my little boyhood friends there, football, or we thought we were, and it was, I have a picture where I'm centering the ball way back then.
I've seen that picture.
And it was when I must have been, 4 or 5 years old.
You went to where? Lauren Andrews, I suppose, elementary, and did you?
Yes, when I came to town, I went to Lauren Andrews. Mr. Bowers was the principal. I can remember many of the teachers that I had. And it was just a wonderful childhood. I enjoyed it. Of course, we're backed up to the schoolyard there.
Yeah.
So I was busy from morning till night, running and playing and whatnot. What you name the game, we tried it. And McConaughey's had a tennis court there, and you might remember this.
Oh, yeah.
I spent many and many an hour on that tennis court too.
That was one of the very few tennis courts in the city, maybe the only one at one time, I don't know, but it was.
Could have been. It was a clay court.
Yeah.
And the only thing they ever asked of us youngsters was that we help when it came time to roll it or to do little chores around it. Tom McConaughey was a little older than I was, but we used to emulate the big boys. John McConaughey was probably the best of the players, the older brother. It was just a joyous time to a young guy that was privileged to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good neighborhood. Had a lot of good fellows from there. A lot of football players came from that neighborhood, too.
Right.
When did you first decide that you wanted to play football?
Well, the first time that I was permitted to go out for football was in junior high school when while they were building the new Lauren Andrews, we went down there for 1 year to Edmund A. Jones, which was the other junior high at that time.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to go out in the 7th or 8th grade, I forget which it was. And so I went out. I was all full of vim and vigor, about as big as...
You weren't very big.
I wasn't very big.
No.
And I can remember my father took me up to Turkey Foot. I think it'd be about my freshman year in high school. And Dave Stewart took a look at him and took a look at me, and the only reason he took me up there was I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep, and I talked myself into the fact that I was going to go to the football camp at Turkey Foot, and it never entered my mind I wasn't going to be allowed to go. And my mother and father felt I was too small, too young. So when I had this problem, my dad finally relented and drove me up, and I found out from Dave Stewart afterwards that he winked at him and said he brought you up here a player that insists he should be here. And I think he talked to Dave about keeping a pretty good eye on this guy because he didn't belong. And it was just the beginning of it. And Dave became a little bit intrigued by this little guy. And that was the beginning of the whole story here.
And of course, you and Dave became real close friends from the time you were in high school right on through.
From the beginning, in those days it was the custom of the coach, Rockney set the style, to take his quarterback. Rockney used to take Stuhlberg up to Cedar Point. That started this trend, and Dave began to take me around with him. And I know you knew Dave. That was an education for a young guy. But my mother and father thought if I happened to be with Dave Stewart, that everything was in good hands. And from there on, of course, and I did. I got a lot of, we'd ride and talk about what do you do here, what would you do there. And I think he really took an interest when I went out for the track team. And I had a pole vaulter who went through more gyrations. But I came from Norwalk, where track was a big thing. And after this guy vaulted, I just took the pole and I vaulted it easily. I don't know what it was, probably 8.5, 9 feet. And I won easily. And Dave couldn't get over that. And he finally used to, later on, he'd say, well, if you make 11 feet tonight, I'll take you to dinner at Bender's. Well, if that wasn't a big thing, that was the ultimate. And I got him for a few dinners. They reached the point where I was up into the 11.6, whatever, I don't remember.
Yeah, not many people remember, but you held the pole vault record there for a good many years at high school.
I had an advantage. Norwalk had some people there that would help and teach you. And of course I was beyond these Massillon youngsters because they had never been subject to that.
In football, you were quarterback.
Right.
And you were a starter you did make the first team did you, for a couple of years, or
I was a starter, I think, my junior year.
junior year?
And my senior year, I could throw, or at least I thought I could, and that was the thing that intrigued Dave, and for that reason, and he put me in a game or two. And first one I ever went in, and he told me what the pass would be, and I just threw it, and it was a touchdown. And I walked out, and my father, like, had fallen over in the stands. He couldn't believe this could have happened to this guy. And it really, it made Dave take more of an interest in me. And of course, throwing the ball then was a little more daring thing than it is today. And as the time went on, and I played all the time at quarterback.
I remember of you winning the game with the pass, I think it was, up at Erie, Pennsylvania. And
we had a couple like that. I can remember.
Vince Define was kicked out or something for fighting.
I forget all the details, but I had just a happy high school career. It was I played basketball. I was in the track team.
Yeah,
I was really wrapped up in my high school.
Well, as a high school player, as the high school games that you played in, which do you remember the most, or is there any particular one you remember the most?
Yes, I remember we beat a Toledo team by a forward pass. I threw it to Paul Story, I think, two of them.
Yeah, Paul Story.
And I can remember the game you were talking about. It was, I guess, I remember one time Dave started me, what he called his pony backfield. Paulie Smith and a couple of us little guys got to start against Akron South. And we got into trouble. I finally had to put the men in to pull it out. But Massillon was getting licked for a while, and I was one of the guys. I couldn't believe that we couldn't do what those other guys did. I was so obsessed with it, I think I didn't really know my own limitations. But at any rate, the team finally won the game.
Akron South, as I recall, was somewhat like the T today. You had the quarterback up there. Behind the center, Smiley Weltner was
Smiley
the coach.
was the coach, right? And they were a little different. And finally, I think our bigger fellas went in and overpowered them. But we sure gave them about a 20-0 deficit. I know Paulie Smith, I think, had a kick blocked and things of that sort that made Dave finally give up and put in the players.
When you graduated, you went to Ohio State. Why did you choose Ohio State University?
Well, that's the state university, and my father thought that's where I should go. He wasn't interested in whether or not I played athletics. He wanted me to play if I wanted to, but the football in particular, he didn't think I was big enough to do it. He was right, and I never forget him. And Raleigh Brown was the other Brown that started. We went down to the old Pennsylvania station. They put us on a train. Raleigh's mother and father, my mother and father. We said goodbye. It was like we were taking a trip to the moon. Raleigh's now a doctor and an MD. We were roommates. And we got so homesick that we used to walk all the way from the Ohio State University in High Street there, all the way down to the railroad station and back on Sundays, or when we didn't have much to do. But we made our grades, and then at the end of the year, I had taken a trip down to Miami and Oxford with some of my friends just to see them there, and gee, I fell in love with that place. I thought that was just what a college should look like. So I asked my father, and at first he was reluctant, but he said, if your grades are satisfactory, and since it is another state school, sister college, you can transfer there. So I did without losing anything. I played baseball at Ohio State and had fun in that in the spring. But they wouldn't give me a uniform for football, which is quite a blow to this great player. I guess it took one look at me. I weighed about 150 pounds.
Oh, yeah. Your father wanted you to be a lawyer, didn't he?
Yes.
Wanted you to study
Yes,
law?
and I did. I went to law school for a while, but it was a waste of time. As time was going on, I'm glad I did that, because in the world I live in now, in professional football, the legal background there, every now and then, is very handy.
Shows up.
And my son, of course, went to Harvard Law School, who runs the Bengals when I am not doing it, and it's been an advantage to even discuss things with him.
When did you decide, Paul, that you wanted to become a football coach?
I don't know. I just, it just happened. I was one of the few fellas when I graduated from college and I never took physical education nor coaching. I studied the coaches I had. I can remember a couple I think I learned as much from because I learned what not to do as what to do. But actually Dave made me enjoy it. I used to go over to Sharon before I'd go back to college in the fall.
Used to help him out over
And
there.
help him out, and I was just obsessed with it. I enjoyed it. I just, it was, I was a goner. And he always, he recognized this. And
He encouraged you to go into it?
well, when I wanted to go to Severn, they had a coach there who was dying of cancer, Bill Hoover. And it was an opportunity. I became a teacher, English grammar, and history. And and coach. This man was in bad shape. And we had success. And I think we lost one game in 2 years. And then when Massillon and Dave took the trouble to tell them about me, and I was one of the few guys in college who got a job coming out. This was
That was in 1932.
No, 1930. I came out and I was actually I was not going to be 21 until I started work at Severn in September.
Oh, yeah, Severn. You were 2 years there, weren't you?
Yeah, I was 2 years there, and I went there, and I was there in 30 and 31, those 2 seasons. And 32 was my first year in Massillon High School.
Severn, you won 16 games, lost one,
Right.
and tied one.
Right. But when it came to the job in Massillon came open, Dr. Bell was president of the school board.
Yeah.
And the people in this community really owe a lot to this man, not because of what he did with me, but because of what he did for the school system. He was far-sighted. Dave, he called Dave. He said, "Who do you think we should hire here?" And Dave says, and I remember what he said because Dr. Bell told me. He says, "That's easy, Brown." Yeah. And so Dr. Bell had a lot of faith in Dave Stewart, and I got the job. That was the beginning of it.
You mentioned Dr. Bell. He was one of our most ardent football fans.
Right.
On his deathbed, he had me calling him from the press box during a football game, telling him the score by quarters.
And there's something.
And the last time I called, Mrs. Bell said, "Well, he's in a coma." Now that's a fact. That was a Friday night.
Yeah, he was a tremendous fellow. He delivered our children, and he was my doctor as well as my friend. I'll never forget when I was given the job at Ohio State, he said, he always called me P Brown. He says, "P, I don't know, you might be wound a little too tight for that kind of a job. I hope you don't explode on it." And I said, "Well, I can't think of any better way to go." And that was the send-off that I got from the good doctor.
Well, you got off to a good start here. You won your first 5 games, as I recall, and then you tied your 6th, and then you lost the last 4. Yeah.
Right, and I think if I remember it, we averaged almost 150 pounds. I'll never forget it.
You were a light ball club, that's right.
And we wore equipment. I can remember them putting on the equipment, even shoes that had been worn before by somebody else. It was, and the next year, and at the end of that year, we played Canton and elected to go for it. $1 a ticket. I can remember being with Dr. Bell when we decided this. And we did well. We had our little stands. This is Don Edmund Jones yet.
Yeah.
And I think we took in around $2,500, which was big in those days. Gave Canton their part. No, at those days, Canton kept what they made at home and we kept what we made. And this gave us a chance to buy uniforms and to start what you know of as the way it developed.
Yeah. Yeah, that game, it wasn't.
We lost the game.
It was, yeah, it was old Massillon Field where.
Right.
Yeah, we lost the ball game, but
Right.
then the following year.
We just kept getting closer, but
You had, you only lost 2 ball games, one to Barberton, that jumping Joe Williams got.
That's right.
Ran around like a rabbit, back farther than he went forward, I think. Couldn't catch him, and then you got beat from McKinley. There was a lot of that.
Lost one the next year, and from there on, of course, we were home free.
After that loss there to Barberton, there was a little scuttlebutt around town. Someone was ready to canyon. Were you aware of that at the time?
Well, as Dr. Bell always said to me, P, the hammers are never very far beneath the surface. And I've used that over the years. I don't think the public here realized the condition of football when I first came here.
That is correct, and you didn't have an abundance of fine material in '33. They were coming up, but you were getting them organized. But then came '34, and you were
lost one game,
and that was to Canton, and you were unscored on coming up to that Canton game, as I understand it.
From there on, we just gathered it slowly. We went from 5-1-4, and then we lost 4, then we lost 2, then we lost 1, and then we started our long string. But the people that were probably a little bit anxious because primarily we didn't beat Canton right off the bat.
That was it.
And then we turned around and won, I think, 8 or 9 and whatever it was in a row, I forget.
Well, they never beat you after that,
That's
after
right.
the '34 game.
That's right. But the same people who, and I can remember one of them was on the school board. It was always very questioning the various formations of everything, and and then he was one of the big rooters when things began to go better. And I never forget, I'm coaching the highest state a few years later, and who's seated out there in the front row at Pitt Stadium? We're going to play Pittsburgh. Shaughnessy was the coach there. This guy, he became a great rooter, a personal rooter. But this is the public. You have to understand that they get disappointed. They want to get there in a hurry, and
well, the public was solid behind you though in '34. I feel sure, and if you recall that they enlarged the stadium. Nobody knows how many attended that Canton game that year because they counterfeited tickets.
yes,
At Akron someplace they did, and they were sitting on laps, and fights were breaking out until they finally were able to distinguish a counterfeit ticket from the real thing. But after the Canton game, there was a couple of members of the school board. They wanted to sever relations with Canton because of the accusing Canton of dirty play. Remember, you were going real good in the ball game until your 2 best offensive players, or maybe Heine Cryer was one and D.C. McCann's the other. They got knocked out, and very early in the ball game, it was 7-6 at the time in Canton's favor. And the final score was 21-6.
that's right. The same thing happened in reverse. Years later, we're playing the McKinley, and Marion Motley got hurt.
Oh yes.
So they want to sever relations with us.
Yeah, that's right.
This is just talk between two very intense communities, and it's a wonderful rivalry, really. And I think really today it's a sporting thing.
Yeah, it kind of stems from the old professional days that I guess is where the rivalry
Right.
really got its start at, and it stems from that. Well, 1935 was your first undefeated season, and we began to roll right along. You had undefeated seasons in 36, 38, 39, and your last year 40. And you wound up with 33 straight wins. The 37 season, as I recall it, we were
Lost
one game to Newcastle 7-0, but the whole right side of your line had the flu about at that time.
We had a series of people who couldn't play, and I took them to the movie in the afternoon, which is my custom to get them away from it. And we all of a sudden had some guys that were vomiting and whatnot, and I called Dr. Bell, and he just told me they can't play. We played Friday night, and we lost on a forward pass. We scored one time early, but it was called back from about the 8-yard line on a penalty. And from that point onward, why it was back and forth. They hit a long pass, and I'll never forget it. Whenever they were going to throw this pass, they put the guy who was going to throw it from fullback to the wingback, and he'd take a reverse pass and throw this long blooper. And we watched it, and we knew it, and I hollered out at our defensive man that he'd changed positions. Here it comes, and he waved back, "I got it, coach." And he froze. He just froze there. It just did something to him. And,
Yeah.
he just didn't react, didn't move. And it was the end of that particular winning streak. The coach of that team, Phil Breidenbaugh, is a good friend and was a fine man, a real credit to high school football, I might
Well,
add.
they were a great, they had a fine record in Pennsylvania. And as I the series started in 1936, and thinking of that ball game, I remember that we went over, played at Newcastle, and it was a muddy, wet night,
Right.
and Charlie Anderson kicked the football 80 yards, as we have it recorded in the Independent.
He punted it.
Did you ever see a better punt than that?
Well, it was a power punt. When I say that, he wasn't a fancy kicker like Horace Gilliam.
No.
He just powered it, and the rain didn't mean much, and it went over the safety man's head, and that was it. We went back then, if you might remember, after losing that 7-0, we ran up a great big score on them. And
Oh, yes.
they decided that they wouldn't play anymore, and so that ended the series.
Well, you were 10-0 in the 9 years you coached the Tigers. And, no, in the 9 years you coached, yeah, you were, the 9 years you coached the Tigers, you were 10-0 5 times, that's what it was. Which is quite a record.
I'll tell you this about the 40 team, which is the last one. I went to Ohio State as coach the next year. That's the team that beat Kent State University, so biggest score in the spring.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered whether my Ohio State team that first year, which lost one game, 14-7 to Northwestern, I often wondered if they could have beaten our 40 team. Our 40 team here in Massillon was much faster. And Ohio State would be bigger. I'm just talking, I had both teams.
Sure.
But I used to wonder about it because some of our players, Pokey Blunt, Lyndall Houston, Horace Gilliam, a lot of these guys became fine pro players. And it was, as I said, Blunt was the most deceiving little fella, but tremendous jet speed.
Powerful legs.
I compared him to the guy that was playing for me at Ohio State. There'd been no contest as far as being a long shot running back was concerned. It was a thing that's crossed my mind more than once.
Well, that, I'm not certain of the score, but something like 46-0. They never finished a scrimmage.
No, they called it off because
Yeah.
they said they had to go into their jobs and serving and things of that sort in the tables. It was actually, it would have been all right in that whole deal, but Jim Slemmer, you might remember,
Yeah.
publicized it. And of course, then he shows up and he puts the ridicule to the college team. And
But they went through the season undefeated.
they went through the season undefeated. But we were much faster and
Well,
quicker.
a sports writer down in North Carolina, I'm sorry I never saved the clipping, but he, through a series of scores, figured out that comparing with the Kent State defeat that we gave them that time in their winning season, that we should have been in the Rose Bowl that year.
We had some guys in Massillon that figured out a lot of things. I remember we had a fellow named Nun Henrik.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
some team was talking about playing us a game. They weren't going to do it. They said they hadn't been scored upon in so many years. And I never forget Nun's reply and letter. But I saw it said, "We haven't even punted in 5 years." Because he was dressing that up pretty good.
Yeah, he played in high school way back. I don't know, back in the teen years, I think Nun Hendrik played. Well, of course, in that period, the tennis grew to the point where we outgrew our facilities down there at.
That's right.
And they built this Tiger Stadium, which appropriately later was renamed Paul Brown Tiger Stadium.
That's an honor.
As an honor to you.
Thank you. I really I feel honored, and I like to drive out there and just look at it.
Yeah, I know you do. About every time you come to Mass, when you drive out and walk around a little bit.
You know, Dr. Bell had a great deal to do with the purchase of that acreage out there. As you know, it's quite an acreage.
Yeah.
And when we were making the plans for this, I can remember going up into the office. There was an architect here named Jake Rauber, and I would be interviewed on the size of this room, or what we wanted for dressing facilities, and how a lot of things. And I spent quite a bit of time trying to help in figuring out how we wanted to do it. And it was a real joy when afterwards, of course, there's practice field there, band practice field. It's picnic grounds. You won't find that in very many cities.
Well, that's right. And then bringing up the band practice field, our football show became complete in 1938 when George Bird joined the
That's right.
the school system and innovated swing band and types of marching that bands were not accustomed to over the country. In fact,
That's right. He started it. He really did.
Started it. I think he did.
Right. His daughter is still our entertainment director for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, and you had him up at Cleveland there with the Browns for long. Then you took him to Cincinnati, didn't
Right.
you?
Well, he'd moved back to Cincinnati,
Uh-huh.
and so it was very easy for me to hire him as our entertainment director.
Yeah, he did a great job. I've often thought of how musical instrument companies must have profited from George Bird's band show.
Yeah.
Because everybody began to follow that pattern of his,
We took him to
buying
Cleveland.
interest in.
Had a all girls band, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Couldn't keep up with them. They got married off so fast. But each year we had to start over with a lot of it, and finally gave up after 2 or 3 years. It was based on the idea that Phil Spitalny had of an all-girls band, and they went on the stage then in the off season.
Uh-huh. Well, your success, of course, here in Massillon attracted national attention. They appeared football stories of Massillon football, Tiger football, and about you. Appeared in almost all the national news and sporting magazines.
A lot of it, I never forget was it the Look or the Life magazine?
Life.
Life, and they spent more time taking pictures. I often wondered how they selected the very few they used. It was a phenomena to me. They took hundreds of pictures.
Otto Hagel, and he took 352 pictures, as I understand. And they used 12 or something like
That's
that,
all.
but they were in color.
Yes, they were.
It was a very fine layout they had.
Right. I think that was the first time a big magazine like that ever did it for a high school. And actually, whenever people think of Massillon to this day, they think football right away.
Yeah. Well, with all this attraction and all, and an entry, you entered Ohio State University. Francis Schmidt resigned, and a campaign immediately was launched to put Paul Brown in. But who contacted you first on that, Paul?
Mr. St. John, the director of athletics at Ohio State, called me and asked me if I would drive to Worcester, Ohio, to a certain professor's home there, a friend of his, where he would like to talk with me. And that's the first part of it. Jimmy Robinson was the president of the Ohio Coaches Association. He was coach then at here in Canton, and he had a lot to do with it. Saint wasn't really sure of putting a high school football coach in down there, but he came then later to our home, and he was taken with Katie. He liked Katie. I think he.
That's right.
He really thought she was special, and she was. And from that point onward, why we began to negotiate. And when I say negotiate, it was when would I go there? I never asked him how much they paid. I don't think I got paid any whole lot more than I made at Massillon, but I did. I had gone there, had received my master's degree at Ohio State, and I knew quite a few of the professors in education as a result, and I told him that I wasn't so concerned about money as I would like to have a full professorship, because it would put me in standing with the faculty that I thought it called for. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that pleased him, and they made me a full professor. And I'll tell you, I'll never forget another thing. Our opening game, we played against Don Farrow, who had been a candidate for the job against me. And as
University of Missouri.
Right. And as we were going in the gate, and I'm riding in with the buses and our players, I see a bunch of Massillon guys there. Tink Ulrich and Swig Thomas, these people that I'd been with around all for the last 10 years or more. So I jumped out of the bus and talked with them. And I then went into through the game, and would you believe, when it came time, I couldn't get in the gate because the gatekeeper, I didn't have a ticket. And I went over and picked up some, didn't know me. I told him who I was, and he says, yeah. And, just get away, boy, you're bothering me. And I went over and picked up some pebbles and was throwing them up to where our training room was up there. And I hit these, went in, and somebody came and looked out, and it was one of the players, and he says, "Coach, what are you doing down there?" I said, "Have somebody come down here and get me in." And the trainer came down and got me in the ball game. I might have been outside. And we won the game. This was the first time a split T formation was ever used in football. Don Farrow did it. We didn't even know it. We played with a wide 6-2 defense, and they kept spreading people out. And I can remember telling our fellows, take your spacing from yourselves. Let them go clear to the sideline if they want to. You space yourself the same distance from your man. They made quite a bit of ground running. They could only score one time. And afterwards, I ran into some of these same guys at a little affair in Massillon's, and I never forget Tink saying to me, "Hey, P," he says, "if you can't beat that team any more than 12-6, this is going to be a long season for you." He didn't know it, but they end up playing in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, they were a great team.
They were a great team, and we didn't even know it. This is Stuber and Ice and Paul Christman. And we didn't even know it. And that was my introduction to Ohio State.
Well, I sat in the press box for that ball game, and the Columbus Riders were a little disturbed too.
Well, it became historical.
They didn't realize that Missouri was as strong as it really was.
That's right. That's right. And they did.
And they had a good quarterback too.
Christian.
Paul Christian. Yeah.
Right. Those were exciting days.
Yeah. Well, then the next year you were a national champion and coach of the year.
That's right. Next year, national championship.
You only lost one, didn't you?
We lost to Wisconsin, and incidentally, it was the same kind of a deal when we lost in high school. We had I think the water that we took on the train they'd used the water, it was there. We just had a tremendous diarrhea, and we had sick people. Even St. John got sick, and that was, I hate to use that as though it were an excuse, but it was the truth. And but we won the national championship because of if you remember that the team that was Boston College that didn't go to one of them, Holy Cross, got licked. They were in the running for it among others, but they were the main one. And they were so sad when they lost to Boston College. They didn't go to that Coconut Grove where all those hundreds of people got killed. But we were national champions then the next week, voted by the coaches and the media, and it was a high honor. We're on our way from this point onward.
Yeah, it was 9-1 that year. The first year was 6-1-1 as I have your
That's right.
record. And
we tied Michigan 2020.
Tied Michigan. Yeah, that was played the same day as the Mass and McKinley game, and about half the Mass and fans had radios to their ears listening to the Michigan Ohio State game. Yeah. I remember, you remember Lieutenant Mock of the State Patrol,
Yes.
was runner. He sat right down in front of the press box, and he called back to us to give us what the score was. Yeah, what the score was.
I was always given credit for being smart in that game, and it wasn't that. I just didn't want to see it happen. The score was 20-20, and there's just seconds to play, and they had to line up for an extra point, which would have made it 21-20. And every time they'd get ready, I'd send in another substitute, and then they'd wave it down. And I actually was just hated I couldn't stand to see the guy kick the ball and beat us after we had fought, and we were big underdogs, really. And finally, that kid, I guess it was doing the kick, and got a little tight under his chin because he just flubbed it, and we came home on that train from up there as though we won the game.
Yeah, well, everybody kind of figured that too, because you were much the underdog in the ball game.
Fritz Chrysler was the coach there then.
Yeah, and he was a good one too.
Yes, he was.
One of the great ones.
Right.
You know, your 43 season, you probably would have had assembled that year were it not for the war. Maybe the greatest team was ever assembled in college football.
Could have been. We had them. It was organized.
You had organized.
I knew where to go. I knew where the players were because I'd been in high school football, and the high school coaches were my friends, and we had, as I said, the state of Ohio is the boundaries of our campus. We're after anybody in the state, and they were almost all state. In-state people.
You took quite a number of Massillon boys with you, also
Right.
your assistant coaches with you down to Ohio State when you started there. But the 43 team, of course, was your boys were shipped out, and you were left with just remnants of your team.
They had to be 17 years old or under. they called us the baby bucks.
Yeah.
And of course, we were an Army school which didn't permit their people on the campus to play. A couple of years later they did. When Widows became the coach, they changed their policy. But we had to play, say, Michigan, and Michigan's got pros, actually, people that you wouldn't believe, but they were going to, it was a naval school. And for that reason, they were permitted, the Navy permitted their people to play. It was just the run of the luck. It was hard for me to handle because wasn't used to it, but even then we had some thrilling things.
Yeah, you were really proud of that team for what they did with what they had.
Tremendous fight, and that was the one when we played Illinois and left the field, and the official came rapping on my door. He said, "Coach, could I see you a moment?" And I said, "Yeah." I was talking to the team. It was 20-20. And he said the game ended in a foul. It can't be if you have one more play unless you want to decline the foul. Oh, I said, "We'll take the play." So we walk out there, and some of them got their shoulder pads off, and the crowd's there's only about a third of them left. And I'll never forget it. I said to John Stungis, who was our place kicker, he really was a point after touchdown kicker. I said, "John, as I'm walking down the steps to go out there, I said, you know, I never missed one of these in my life." And he said, "Did you kick him a lot, Coach?" And I said, "No, I never tried any." And we lie afterward. It was a fun thing. It never entered my mind that we were going to kick a 3-point field goal and win the game. Well, I remember standing on the sideline. I got my arms spread out so that I'm getting everybody back, and the crowd filtered right in sort of behind the goalpost. They were coming out close to the field. As you know, the game's over. And it made we had the right distance. It was about a 30-yard field goal, but it appeared closer because of the crowd being in the back around the end zone there. And then John Stungis kicked it, and I said to Widows, who was to my left, I said, I believe that blooming thing went over. It surprised me. And at that point, I'm up in the air on people's shoulders. It was an amazing end. And you know, there were people who called and checked on their bets and things like that for literally, actually years.
Some bets had probably been paid off already.
Yes, right. It was an unusual circumstance in college football.
That was your last Iowa State team, that 43 team.
Went to Great Lakes.
Went to Great Lakes. You enlisted in the Navy, and
right.
You signed there at Great Lakes as coach there.
Went in as a junior grade lieutenant. And we had played Great Lakes with our baby bucks. And the admiral there, Emmett, his name was, sort of liked us. And he had asked Mr. St. John that if I went in the service, he'd let him know. Goodness, I get to Great Lakes, and they had a place for us to stay. It was all set up. And of course, I coached the team and became athletic officer. And as time went on, I was really doing what I always did, and we had some fine football teams.
Yeah, you were 92 and 44, and then they shipped out your team, most of it, didn't they?
Yes.
At 45, you had to start almost over.
They left one guy they never heard of, Motley. That's what happened was one of the captains was transferred to Fleet City in California, and when he gets there, the admiral wants him to have a good football team that gives the spirit of things to the base. And he says, "I know right where to get one." See, I'd been pulling the jackets. That means the orders, the credentials of these guys.
You were 6'3".
Yeah, we
45, and finished out by whamming Notre Dame.
That's right, and that took care of it. Made things very easy for all of us.
39-7.
Right. The Football College Hall of Fame, that guy did.
Did he?
Yeah.
But I remember looking at those movies afterward, and they were trapping this guy all day.
Mm-hmm.
And one time they came out and went to trap him, and they couldn't find him. He was out of position.
You remember this big Notre Dame guy with a big name, long name?
Strangelo or some kind of a
Yeah,
big
remember.
name.
I
He was an
forget.
All-American. And it would have been worse that day. Motley fumbled once down deep, and
Yeah.
oh, that was tremendous.
We were ready.
Yeah, I guess we were ready.
Notre Dame had a great year, see, and in fact, it was the only time I lost.
Bud Grant.
Yeah, Bud was an end.
We lost to Michigan the first game, played down and lost both guards, as I remember.
Mm-hmm. Took us a while to assemble a team because of the, they took all of the others at once, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Bob had a mustache then. I remember he was your dentist. He came to the house. I stopped in to see your Wisconsin game.
That's right, you did.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been taping.
Okay. Well, while you were there at Great Lakes, they began organization of the All-America Football Conference, and Mickey McBride at Cleveland, I guess, had one of the franchises and was looking for a coach, and you were approached.
He asked John Dietrich, the writer for the Plain Dealer, who
Yeah.
he'd get, and John Dietrich told him he would get me. What happened was that Arch Ward, the sports editor of the Chicago Tribune,
Yeah.
was in the process of starting this league with the idea that there would be, like in baseball, National and American League. He came out to Great Lakes, he saw me, in fact he pursued it. And at first I really wasn't all that interested. I finally talked with Mr. St. John, and he said, Paul, you have the right to come back, it's your job. He said that you'll have to work something out with widows because he's had a good year, and well, I was a little tender on the subject, I guess, because it wouldn't bother me today, but at the time I thought, well, I'll make this easy for everybody. And of course, what they were talking about, building a franchise in Cleveland, I could do it rather easily because I knew the players who had been going through Great Lakes that I wanted. And it wasn't like starting up a new league. Some of the players had been in the service for 3 or 4 years. There were no contracts left anymore. They were null and void. So I went after my own people, and I had some of them paid while I was still at the Great Lakes. And the McBride was a friend of Arch Ward's. That was the connection there. I actually signed my contract to coach the Cleveland Browns in the Chicago Tribune offices. It is sort of ironic, yes.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, pro football wasn't in the state it's in today.
Not near as high a plane.
That's right. And there were times when I wondered what I, got myself into. But I'll tell you what, today, very comforting because, you grow to a certain age in college football, and all you do is go back and teach in physical education or something, or at least it's not you're not, where you were able to do anything you want to do and completely independent, but you can become from the pro game. Mr. St. John, I think, took some abuse on the fact that I made this decision.
It was kind of a tough decision at first.
Yes, yes, and he was a grand man, really. I like Saint, and Some people always had the idea that I didn't, but that wasn't true at all. And he had a wonderful wife. We were dear friends with him, and he was not meaning to be doing anything to me. I think it just was something that thought he was explaining to me when I was still at Great Lakes. And of course, I was still at Great Lakes when we named the Cleveland team.
First, it was going to be the Panthers, wasn't it?
Cleveland Panthers, and the guy came in McBride felt he was trying to shake him down. We gave a car for the guy that could win it, and there were all kind of entries to name the team. And I told the people who were there was a judge, and Trish Speaker was one. I forget the third man, and they were the deciding people on the name. And John Brickles was representing me there in Cleveland, and I said, John, just tell those fellas I want something we can animate. Well, they picked the Panthers for that reason. And we awarded a guy a car, and then in comes this guy who said that he'd had a team in Cleveland. And apparently he did have a semi-pro team many years before that, which he had called the Panthers. And he wanted money for the use of the name, which didn't set with the people there. And so they decided to run another thing to see what change the name again. And it was agreed upon that they would use whatever name appeared the most, whatever word it was that came in on most of the letters. And since I had been coach at Ohio State and Massillon and was right at home, the name Brown's this, or it came into play so often, and it was the most of any of them, and it just became, and they did this, the Cleveland Browns, and that's how it became named.
And you were an instant success.
We were a success, right?
When the All-American Conference ran 4 years, 4 years, and you won it every year, all 4 years, and probably because of your dynasty, it probably floated up.
Well, it probably had something to do with it. We won too much, they said. But on top of that, we wanted to get into the National League. From the moment we got into the National League, we were home free as far as being a successful financial venture. And the story there, of course, is that we won, and I went through that last game of the season. That used to, everywhere we were, it was always billed as the World's Championship game. Today they call it the Super Bowl. But I went through that 11 times, I think, and 7 before we got into the National League, and 4 before we got there. And I can tell you this about that Cleveland Brown team before they were in the National League. They reached what I thought was the peak about 2 years before we got there. That's when Motley was young. Mm-hmm. And all these guys were, Otto Graham was young, I mean real young. We were better then than we were after they merged us in.
Max
Speedy.
Max Speedy, your ends.
We had great personnel. Grossa, McCormick, you name them.
Mm-hmm. And you pushed the forward pass and developed it to a high
We
degree.
it was fire and fall back. We'd throw, trap, draw, trap. These are things to slow down the pass rush. In the first game, they pitted us against the Greasy Needles team because they had won the National League.
That was in the 50s, when you went in the National League, yeah.
And we won the game big, and afterwards he said Brown should be a basketball coach.
Yeah. Well, didn't he, did you have some taunts before that? They thought the All-America Conference wasn't good enough to play in? Didn't even have a football or something like that?
Elmer Layden was the commissioner, and he says, go get a football. And it's really all it did was get us ready for the game, and the game was really not a close contest. We really had personnel.
Well, the final scores I have here was 35-10.
That's right. After that game, Bert Bell walked in our dressing room.
And they were the defending champions.
They were the defending champions. And we had 3 touchdowns called back on things that we couldn't find in the pictures. But I'll tell you, Bert came in, Bert Bell, afterwards, and he stuck out his hand and he said, "That's the most intensely coached football team I've ever seen." Well, what it really was I'm hoping to get them on the field before they turn to sugar. You know, it was they were so
you
ready.
had them hyped up on it.
Well, I didn't do it. They
did
were
it
doing it.
themselves.
They were doing it to us, and we worked for about a year on different things, and so how we would play. They had what they called the eagle defense. They had 5 men across the line, and they'd line up off of the certain offensive players. Like the ends would line up off of the shoulders of the tackle. We would imperceptibly widen each time. The first down we'd be about 6 inches, and the next time we'd be about this. Then we'd get out to here, and all of a sudden there was a guy in the Hall of Fame named Wojciechowicz, and he's standing up going like this, time out. He was standing in the middle. There wasn't anybody within 6 yards of him. It was. Those were fun days. It was a pretty good dissecting, or surgery as we called it.
Well, going back into your All-America, in those 4 years, you won 47 games, lost only 4, and had 3 ties.
Yeah, so we
I was
dominated.
glad you had.
Our big rivals were the 49ers. Buck Shaw had a great team, and we had some great games with them. New York had a great personnel. There were a lot of great football players in there that ended up in the National League, and some of whom were today. Arnie Weinmaster is going to become a Hall of Famer here in a couple of days, to give you the idea.
Well, you won the NFL titles in 50, and then 54. You won again in 55. And in the first 10 seasons as head coach of the Browns, you won a league or a division championship, according to records I have. And
As I said, we had great personnel, and
Yeah.
it was the spirit of the occasion. Of course, Otto took us into many of them, Otto Graham.
he was a great quarterback.
Right.
And you found him in that one loss, didn't you, at Ohio State your first
He
year?
beat us. He was running to the left. He was a tailback and a single wing, and he was running to the left. And I don't believe I ever saw anything quite like it. A guy did a great big cross sachet, and for a right-handed passer to throw on a run clear across to the other side of the field like he did, that was some coordinated man. Made a believer out of me. They beat us 14-7 on that one play.
In 17 seasons as Browns coach, you had but one losing season. That was 1956. It was 5-7. Then comes the 1962 year when you were 7-6-1, and that was your last team.
Last team, right.
You had some differences with Modell, and he fired you.
Yes. Called me, I never dreamed of such a thing, because I was under contract I still had 8 more years of my contract. When he came there, he told me he was buying the team primarily because of yours truly. Of course, really, he didn't have money. He just, Bob Grease Sr. Backed him up financially to be able to swing it. He had very little, really. But he had sold Grease on the idea of merchandising the team, was the term that was used. Doubleheader in football, like in baseball.
Yeah, I remember that.
Lasted a year or two and went up in smoke. Wasn't sound. As I told Bob Grease, I said, you don't merchandise football by anything other than having a great mechanism and winning. And I still believe that.
Well, you were out of coaching then from 1963 through 1967, and during those periods you did a lot of traveling, didn't you?
Yes, we traveled the world, Katie and I.
Tell me about that airplane. You almost had a fatal accident.
We sure did. We were leaving Hong Kong to go back to Tokyo, JAL, Japanese Airlines. And as we took off from Hong Kong, Katie was seated to the window.
Katie, we haven't documented her as being your wife and even high school sweetheart.
Right. So Massillon and I went with her when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And she looked out the window and she says, "Is that normal?" And I looked out and the fire engine was on fire, I thought. So I called the little hostess. She took a look out. She went pity-patting up to the cockpit to see these people in a hurry. Then one of them came back, and by this time the second engine was on fire, the inside one too. And he then came on. He talked at length in Japanese. Some strange things happened. Then a lot of those people got their lifesavers out from under the seat, and guys, they were blown up there halfway up to the ceiling. And of course, you're not supposed to do it yet. And he finally came on in English and told us that he was going to circle back. We'd been out about 20 minutes, and that he's going to keep the left side up in the circling, which was on fire. He didn't pull any punches with us, and he thought he could keep it up long enough to make a quick landing. Told us how to position our heads and not to blow up these things, you know. And to make a long story short, I said goodbye to Katie, and we said our mutual goodbyes. We thought we were going to die, but the guy landed it, and of course they had us from foam right away, and we got out as soon as we could. Everybody, even that was a sort of a mess, the way some of these people, some of the men were the worst offenders. They just trampled right over people to get to the door and get out first. So and you could see the engines were all burned out when they'd hit them, of course, with foam. And we went in, and they then kept us, or asked us to stay for a period of time at the Peninsula Hotel where we had stayed before. And it was a hair-raising thing, and about 3 or 4 days later we took a different airline. And the smart-aleck hostess said, "Ladies and gentlemen, you are now on Air Chance." It was Air France. And everybody laughed. That's the experience you were talking about.
Yeah. Well, then during this off-year period, you were also inducted into the Professional Football Hall of Fame at Canton, which was
right.
So it's quite an honor.
It's an emotional thing. It's something they can never take away from you, and that was in the early days of the Hall of Fame that I had this happen to me, and I think I had been somewhat helpful in getting it here in Canton. It should be in Canton.
I am told that you were largely responsible for it, not just helpful.
Well, what I did is line up some of my friends in as owners, like Art Rooney Sr., for example, and people of that nature, and I simply said to them something that I thought was very logical. The National Football League started in the front window of somebody's automobile sales here, and George Hallis was one of the people that partied to it. And if it started here, I don't know if anything any more appropriate than to put the Hall of Fame here. And I think I convinced some people. We had rivals. Detroit wanted it. It was Latrobe wanted it. All kinds of places. And they put it in Canton, and I must say to you that the National Football League people are just very pleased that they did.
Yes, they've done a fine job.
Tremendous job.
Well, then came the Cincinnati Bengals, Paul, following your career. Organized, and when your first season was 1968, wasn't it? You brought
right.
Your two sons, Mike, and you were part owner and general manager and coach, and Mike was assistant general manager, and
that's right. Still is.
Pete was personnel
director. Still the same. What happened? Pete Rozelle had told me that he would like to have me come back into football. He was helpful. He felt that he tried to dissuade Modell from doing what he did, and he couldn't do it. So I knew that I could get the franchise, so I had a family meeting out in La Jolla, California, and all of the children were there, the 3 boys and and 2 of them had wives and babies, and I was in the process. Robin, the oldest boy, had a couple of radio stations out around Little Rock, and I was in Dickering for a station there in San Diego, KSON, a good one, radio station, and also the one in Escondido. So I said to him, we went and did some financial figuring and whatnot with the people of finance. And I said, now we'll all go to bed tonight, sleep on it, and tomorrow morning we'll make up our mind whether we buy these radio stations. There were 2 of them that I wanted, or whether we go back into football. And so we get up in the morning and eat our breakfast, go into the living room, and I said, well, we guess we have to make a decision. And Katie said, well, we've made the decision, we'll go back into football.
She knew you.
I don't even know if she asked the kids. And we were on our way back to Cincinnati, and it has been a pleasant thing for me. It was really a joy. And the first years were difficult. We had poor players, that all the cast-offs that they could give us, we had them. And there was a war going on that a lot of our people were not able to. You could draft a guy out of college, but you couldn't necessarily get him to play because the military had taken him. And I'll never forget a coach up in Western Reserve named Tommy Davies said to me, in fact, he wrote me a letter on it. He says, how can you dare, just due to your record and the things that you've done in football, when you know you don't have a chance and the record can't be good, take this thing up and coach in Cincinnati like you're doing. And I remember saying, well, Tommy, I really, that doesn't bother me. I look forward as to, what we can do. And of course, as time went on, we finally did get to a Super Bowl quicker than any other team. And I have no regrets. Records, wins and loses, wins and losses, I guess I should say, just part of the game. I don't like to lose, but I suffered through it. And of course, today we got a very solid enterprise.
Well, you came into a sad moment in your life in the spring of 1969 when you lost your Katie.
Right.
In your life for many years. And
right.
It was of your children.
She was a brittle diabetic, and she was near blind at the time. In fact, she was blind. Mm-hmm. And she fought a tremendous fight with this disease, but there was just no chance. She had a heart attack when we were in Hoyt, and I brought her body home, and I was a unmarried, I guess you'd call it a widower, for 5 years.
And then you married your secretary, Mary, and she filled the void. A very fine, lovely woman.
Right. Mary had come from London, Ohio. She was a friend of the Sawyers, who lived in London, Ohio at the time. And she came down and applied for the job. And I gave her the job. She was a good influence in our office. I really never thought anything about, really I just was sort of oblivious to her. And they came out to California, John Sawyer and Dr. Hackett, one of my former players, to visit me in my home there. I kept the house home. And John said, "Do you mind if we bring along another visitor?" And I said, "No." And it didn't make any difference to me. I didn't stay at the house when the guests were there. I'd always get down and live at the Del Charro Hotel. And so Mary came along with them. That's who they brought along. And I noticed her for the first time, and it led to our getting married. And of course, it's now been 11 years, and happily so.
Well, your last year was of coaching was 1975, and you quit with a 11-3 record, and you were in the conference playoffs.
We played and lost in the playoffs to the Raiders in Oakland in a great game. I think it was 21-23 or something like that.
And decided to give it up on New Year's Day, 1976, right?
Yeah, I did it then so that
That's the coaching end of it, I should say.
Yes,
the rest.
coaching, and I remained as general manager and one of the owners. And I actually didn't like to think about having a press conference and going through the emotional ringer of making that kind of announcement. I just appointed the new coach and did it all at one fell swoop, as they say. It was, and it was at a time when it was easy for me not to be involved. The sports pages are filled with the Rose Bowls and everything else, and I tried to do it as, I won't say I wanted to go out the back door, but it bothered me, and I wasn't sure, but I did it to myself, and I don't regret it. It had reached the time when it should happen. No regrets.
You told me one time, I asked you how long you were going to continue, and I think the remark was, until I feel it's getting to me, or something like that in that business.
Well, when I first came back to the Bengals, I elected to coach it, and I said publicly that I'd do it for maybe 2 or 3 years and get it underway and absorb the knocks and the losses that go with starting a new franchise, and then turn it over to somebody. And I ended up by coaching it for 8 years, which went beyond what I had thought about. And actually, it began to weigh a little heavily, and although my health was fine, and all my life I can go to sleep the night before a game or afterwards, and it doesn't hang on me like that. Actually, to go out in the field the day of the game and call signals and be part of it was intriguing to me. But we have come full cycle, and I have no regrets about remaining as an owner and general manager.
Well, your years of coaching, there was always a little flavor of Massillon, not only by you, but you always had a little flavor of Massillon in it, and players and coaches, and like George Bird in the band, now Shirley Bird down there. But you were also did many innovations in football, which we got to make note of, and that is that you were one of the first to use movies. You started at Massillon, motion pictures of your games. I think Joe Purcell was maybe the first one.
He was the photographer.
The first original photographer. And then you created a messenger system of running guards in, who another Massillon guy, Lynn Houston, was one of your messengers to carry plays in. And then you, I guess you invented the face mask, did you not, to protect?
Well, yes. What I said to the Riddell people is, make me something no bigger than my little finger, with tensile strength enough that it'll take away the inclination for somebody to swing at a guy or catch a stray heel flying through the air, save the nose and the teeth. And they did, and no more than an ounce in weight. And they came up with it, and what happened was it just spread for a while. I was doing better financially with the rights and royalties to that than I was in coaching. But it spread to all the states.
Yeah.
Some states insisted on it. Actually, some of the things from the pictures we graded out our players, and we graded out ourselves. We had what we call statistical study, which we did in the off-season, and that spread. It's actually, when I went into pro football coaches only work during the season.
Yeah, I know that brings me to a point here that in the citation, when you were inducted into the Hall of Fame, you were given credit for your organization abilities, and the citation in part read, "In addition to his great record, Brown is equally respected as a man who brought fine organization to professional football. He was the first to make coaching a year-round occupation, not only for himself, but for a full-time resident coaching staff, a practice that since has become universal." Then, of course, you have also been recognized. The Rotary Club has established the Paul Brown Scholarship here, and
That's why I'm here tonight.
that's why you're here tonight. And you were also, I believe, received the governor's prodigious award presented by Governor Rhodes at one time there.
Well, Jim Rhodes is a friend all over the years. In fact, he had a lot to do with getting that stadium built in Cincinnati. And of course, they needed two people, two pro enterprises. The Reds couldn't do it on their own, and when they had us, that made it possible to do it. And it is really one of the few financially, I think, self-sustaining stadium that I know of.
You also authored 2 books, didn't you? You first wrote one, something on football,
It was technical football.
and then of course, you wrote the Paul Brown PB in conjunction with Jack Clary, the PB, the Paul Brown story. I have a copy of it here, and I think I'm just going to close this little interview with you by reading a couple of paragraphs that you closed your book with, Paul, which I thought was very appropriate. You quoted Dean Elizabeth Hamilton of Miami University, and of a statement that she made. "The eternal verities will always prevail. Such things as truth, honesty, character, and loyalty will never change." And you said, "I have tried to live my whole life by those words, and it has made me a happy man."
That's right. She was right. She was right when she said that. And I used to go to the chapel programs at Miami and hear her say these high-flown words, and go back to my fraternity house and try to figure out just what that meant. And she was right.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.